Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the final week of November again today. I did a video at the end of last week just musing that we might see some colder weather coming along for the final few days of November. But whilst we're still playing with this idea, I'm going to have a look again at it this morning. It's certainly by no means definite, it's not certain, but certainly the models, the computer models, are sort of playing with an idea of raising pressure to the north and to the northeast, and possibly getting the winds around into the east by the time we get through to, say, the final 5 or 4 days of the month. Anyway, before I get on with the video, I just want to talk about the advertising. There'll usually be a video ad overlaying my weather videos at GavsWeatherVids.com. Please play those videos. You'll be supporting GavsWeatherVids.com by doing that. So we're going to start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly charts, just to put things into context. This is the anomaly at 500 millibars, 18,000 feet. For 8 to 10 days time, so this is taking us towards the start of the final week of November. So the blue curves here indicating below average heights, that's below average temperatures at 18,000 feet, and that extrapolates to low pressure. The orange and red colours indicating above average heights, above average temperatures at 18,000 feet, again that extrapolates to high pressure. And the lines here is the jet stream running across the Atlantic, southwards around the trough, and then rising up over the ridge sitting over Europe. So what I've got here is a big trough of low pressure, below average heights, trough of low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, a very large trough there. We've got the jet stream running out of America, out of Canada, diving southwards around that trough into the mid part of the Atlantic, and then rising up across Scandinavia, actually, over this ridge. This area of orange colours here is the above average heights. That's a ridge of high pressure developing up over Scandinavia, and that's being inflated actually by the jet stream rising north in towards the Arctic, taking warm air from the Atlantic up into the pole, allowing that ridge to build. So this is a classic sort of battle type situation, really, with the trough in the Atlantic, the ridge over Scandinavia. Which way would it go? Can't really say from this. It could be that the ridge would take over, but it's also possible that the trough of low pressure would just move in and this ridge would collapse. So it's too early to say actually what happens at the end of the month, but certainly the hints are there that there's a change to much colder weather. Now this is the GFS 500 millibar height anomaly. That was the ECMWF, by the way. This is the GFS height anomaly. It's quite similar, but it's a bit different. We've got the low pressure, the trough here, much closer to the British Isles than we have on the ECMWF. It's actually that trough is actually coming into the British Isles. But jet stream is still digging southwards around that trough, diving south in towards the southern parts of Europe. And we have got this ridge building here, but it's not as strong or as far north as it is on the ECMWF. It's more southerly based, but it's the same sort of idea, though both models really are playing with the same type scenario. So if we run through the charts, these are the generic charts from the computer models. First of all, we've got the GFS. This is for 192 hours away, so this is next Wednesday, the 21st of November. We can see that we've got the low pressure out in the Atlantic there, quite a big trough of low pressure. We've got the ridge here across central parts of Europe, and we're bringing up this southerly wind, and this is important because as we run through to the next chart, that low pressure is pushed into the British Isles, quite an intense area of low pressure, and we're taking that southerly to southeasterly flow right up in towards the Arctic. This is called warm air advection, WAA, and this is the one of the classic signs that we're going to get a ridge of high pressure building over Scandinavia. Once you take this southerly or southeasterly flow with warm air up into the pole, up into the Arctic, you usually correspond that with a build of pressure on the eastern side of that warm air advection, and that build of pressure is starting to take place over Scandinavia. So as we go through to the next chart, which is Friday the 23rd of November, this is 10 days away, we see we've got that build of pressure developing there across central and northern parts of Scandinavia. Again, we bring that warm air advection up in towards the pole, and we're still under low pressure actually as we saw on the height anomaly chart, low pressure very much dominating from the Atlantic for us for at least the next 8 to 10 days. So very unsettled weather probably coming up next week with some really heavy rain likely at times. But what's going on over Scandinavia in the pole remains important as we go beyond this. It's going well into the unreliable part of the model run, but we'll just carry on looking and see what happens. Again, low pressure very much dominating, however, a deep and quite intense area of low pressure. But notice this area of high pressure building now from Scandinavia, stretching out towards Greenland, well to the north, of course, well to the north of the British Isles, but it is building up there. And what happens is that as we push that low pressure, the trough, through in towards Central Europe, then that allows this area of high pressure, this blocking area of high pressure by now, to really start to take over the weather. So as we go towards the end of the month, this is taking us towards the 27th of November, so this is getting towards the end of the month. We start to move that low pressure away into the continent, and it's turning much colder now with this area of blocking high pressure really taking over the pattern. And we can see that the jet stream, the black line here, is now digging well southwards in towards the Mediterranean. So this is a classic build up really to a cold spell. We get the warm air advection going up in towards the Arctic. We build the ridge over Scandinavia, and eventually the trough pushes through, the trough of low pressure pushes through into Central Europe, allowing that blocking area of high pressure to take over. This is very classic of what you see, or what we see when we're getting into a cold pattern. Now, if we have a look at the ECMWF, this is for a week's time, Tuesday the 20th of November. We see that we've got the ridge of high pressure there in the central part of Europe, and we've got the low pressure dominating in the Atlantic. What does the ECMWF do? Well, it stalls this area of low pressure in the Atlantic. We start to bring up this southerly flow. Notice the ridge building in from the east. This isn't cold air underneath this ridge of high pressure, but we're looking at the pattern really evolving into one that could deliver cold weather. So as we go through to Thursday the 22nd of November, again we've got that deep trough of low pressure in the Atlantic. We're bringing up this southerly wind. It's not going quite up into the Arctic, but it is going far enough north to start allowing this ridge to begin to build over Scandinavia. The ridge from Central Europe is starting, the ridge of high pressure over Central Europe is starting to ridge in towards Scandinavia. And as we go through towards the end of the run, which is 10 days away, Friday the 23rd of November, again that trough of low pressure is stalling in the Atlantic. We're bringing up this southerly wind. It's quite a mild wind miss, it's quite a mild run from the ECMWF, but again notice that ridge of high pressure building over Scandinavia, and we're starting to get a build of high pressure developing over Greenland and ridging down in towards western parts, or I should say eastern parts of Canada. So again, this is sort of playing with the same idea of the GFS model. We're taking that southerly wind up, we're getting the warm air advection, and we're beginning to build the ridge of high pressure here over Scandinavia and over the pole, over Greenland. So again, I say this is the same sort of idea from the GFS model that we're gradually beginning to build up towards a cold pattern from this. Now, just to see what could go wrong with this is the GEM, this one in the Canadian model. We've got this area of low pressure over the country in a week's time, on Tuesday the 20th of November, and the ridge is there over central parts of Europe. So it's the same sort of idea as what we've just been seeing for a week out, but look what happens as we go through to 10 days out. This is Friday the 23rd. We've brought the jet stream in across the country, and we've collapsed that ridge down into Central Europe, and this low pressure really is dominating off the Atlantic. We're not getting the build of pressure up over Scandinavia or at the northern latitudes with this, as we was on the ECMWF and the GFS. Instead, we're running that southwesterly wind across the country. We've collapsed the ridge down into southern parts and central parts of Europe. So that's what can go wrong when we're building up towards a cold pattern, because remember, Atlantic dominated weather in the late autumn and winter is really the preset pattern for our weather. That's the pattern that we should have: westerly winds, southwesterly winds. That's why they're prevailing winds. When we get into a cold block pattern, that is really the exception. The prevailing pattern should be Atlantic mild weather. when we're building up to a cold pattern, a block pattern, there's a lot of obstacles to get over, there's a lot of hurdles to jump over to get there, and very often it all goes wrong. The block collapses and we just get the southwesterly or westerly winds running in across the country. So this is by no means a done deal, but the models are still playing with this idea that we're going to get into a colder, more block type pattern as we go through to the final, say 5 days of November and going into the start of December. Now whether this comes off, again, we've just got to wait and see how the models deal with this. If it's going to come off, models will increasingly pick up the idea and run with it. If it doesn't, then they'll all start going towards the GEM idea, which is to collapse any attempted block down into Central Europe and run the westerly winds back in across the country. So really it's just a matter of waiting and seeing. That's all we can do, see what happens. Now come back tomorrow, I'm going to be doing the 5-day forecast, so come back for that, but that's all for now. Thanks for watching.